Hello and welcome to the Cinema ATL podcast. The Cinema ATL podcast is a weekly podcast that examines the world of entertainment through the lens of local Atlanta filmmakers. That would be us, your hosts. I am Michael D. Friedman, and that is
Martin Kelley.
And today we've got a forgotten film for you. We're looking back at Not One Less from 2000. But first, Martin, why don't you tell our listeners how they can help the podcast out?
You can help the podcast by listening like you're doing right now and commenting and rating and subscribing on whichever format you listen to us on. So that could be Apple Podcasts, that could be Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and now Google Podcasts and even YouTube. So check us out there, comment there, and rate us there.
Yes, and we also want to hear from you. So you can always tweet us at CinemaATL, or my personal Twitter is at Badger33.
Or hit me up at Marte_real1.
And don't forget to check out our Instagram at CinemaATL Podcast, where you can not only hear about new episodes, but get a lot of other cool stuff as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And check us out at the legacy site, cinemaatl.com.
Well, all right. Martin, you picked this film, Not One Less, so let's just get into it.
All right, so today's forgotten film is a film called Not One Less. This is from one of my favorite directors, Zhang Yimou from China. Let's talk a little bit about what the film is about. It's set in the People's Republic of China during the 90s, and it centers on a 13-year-old substitute teacher named Wei. She gets called in to substitute in a remote village for their old teacher for 1 month. And she is told by that teacher she's not allowed to lose any students or they lose funding. So one boy in the class has to take off to the big city to search for work. She goes looking for him to bring him back. So the film actually addresses education reform in China and the economic gap between the urban and rural populations. So this is a smaller film. If you know anything about Zhang Yimou, he is known for some of his epic films about China. But this one is filmed in a neorealistic documentary style with non-professional actors who play basically themselves. Honestly, most of the actors have the same names as their characters, and it's kind of blurring the line between drama and reality. And so that's kind of the background of this film. Again, Not One Less, and the director is Zhang Yimou.
Yeah, and this was adapted from a story called A Sun in the Sky by, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this person's name.
Shi Zhangxing.
There you go. And
cinematographer, Yang Hu.
Yang Hu. I can pronounce that one.
Oh, you got that one.
And yeah, like you said, the cast was filled with really non-actors. So I don't really know whether it's worth saying who they were because they haven't been in anything else.
Right. But, I think it's safe to say, these were all non-actors, and so you've never seen them other than this film. So.
Yeah, I will say that they actually do a really good job in their roles. I don't know if we want to get into the discussion of the film yet, but I would say that, as non-actors, they did put on some interesting performances.
No, absolutely. They were affecting. And, let me talk a little bit about why I love the film, and then I want your take on it. So, one, I love the film because I love the director. The fact that he's able to take non-actors and do this completely different style of film. He's known for epic landscapes, epic colors, and this is a drab look at the drab villages in, remote China, and the drab big city even, at times. And the fact that he's able to use his skills as a filmmaker to sort of bring this story to life. And again, it's a story at its heart about the human spirit and determination. And so this is a film about a young girl who's in way over her head as a substitute teacher who's 2 or 3 years older than the class she's supposed to be teaching.
Yeah.
And she really doesn't know what to do, and she has to find her way in a big world. It starts out in a small world in this village, but then she has to go to the big city and find her way in this big world to accomplish the goal of saving a child in her mind. And that's what, that's what the story is about. And it really kind of opens your eyes to sort of the possibility of grit and determination in the face of all odds. And so that's what I really like about it. I don't want to be too spoilery about some of the things. There's some wonderful moments in my mind that I'll talk about after I get your thoughts on it. That we don't want to get too spoilery, but at the same time, there's some really nice moments that I'll highlight. But I'm really anxious to find out what you thought about it. One of the reasons I picked it is I'm trying to train myself to go back to watching more foreign films. I used to consume a lot of foreign films, and I know that I've gotten lazy, over time
Hmm.
in recent years because I honestly it becomes a little bit burdensome to read subtitles all the time. But foreign films used to excite the heck out of me, and so I really want to get back into it. And so that's why I picked this as a forgotten film, just so that I hope everyone else can, if even if they don't watch this film, to go out and discover foreign language films.
And you also told me that you saw this film at Sundance, and that's actually a good tie into just in a couple weeks. Sundance is going to be doing their annual festival, and it's going to be playing some of it at the Plaza Theater here in Atlanta. They're doing a virtual version this year, so that's really cool.
Yes. No, it actually is a great tie-in because this certainly was a film I discovered at Sundance. It was where I was able to meet the director Zhang Yimou, who's hasn't been to America all that many times, and so at the time, this was a departure for him. He had worked with Gong Li for many years, and most of his films that he worked with Gong Li have international renown, and for
Hmm.
good reason. They're all fantastic. I've seen many of them, and they're
Well, what are
very
some of the films that our listeners might be familiar with, or that you would also recommend from him? I know we want to get into this one, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I originally wanted us to look at To Live, which is the title of what I believe is his masterpiece. He had also Sorin. I'm not pronouncing that correct, but Red Sorin is one of his films. And the story of QG is another one of his films, and they all star Gong Li. So if you look for Gong Li in that time frame in the '90s, that
right.
would be you'd find most of the films that I'm talking about and the ones that brought Zhang Yimou to sort of international prominence. And I got to meet him. That was really exciting for me, being one of my favorite directors at the time, and since he's still one of my favorite directors. He didn't speak any English, so it was me talking to him with his interpreter, which was still
Hmm.
a fun experience. He was very gracious and very humbled that American audiences actually were embracing his film. So that was a fantastic thing, which is why I picked Not One Less, even though there's some other films that he's done since Not One Less, even that they're maybe more accessible, like The Road Home, which is actually when he changed from working with Gong Li to working with Zhang Ziyi, who people may remember from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Hmm. Well, I mean, so you wanted to hear my opinion on it. So yeah, there are many things I appreciate about this film. I would say that overall, it was not my favorite film, but there are very many things that I did appreciate about it. I really liked, peeking behind the curtain of China. That was really cool to see China in the '90s and see, how everyday life, was for not just the people in the cities, but also for the rural communities. And so that was really eye opening, also, especially to see this small rural community that was really just a couple shacks, and it's just like really impressive that people survive in those conditions. And uh, so that was really cool. And then seeing the city, like you said, and everything was, like you said, it was very real, very documentary style. But it was also very visually appealing in some ways as well. I could tell, this rural town with dirt roads everywhere, and brick houses, shacks, was settled in this like valley, which was beautiful green mountains and everything like that. So seeing China is something that most Americans don't get to see very often. at least not portrayed in present day. So that was really interesting to see. I did like the story of the dedication of this young girl who is in way over her head, and what she does to try to get this boy to come back with her to this town. It is very inspirational to see how much she and this is where the debate comes in for me, is also it's great to see her perseverance, but was it really, to me, was it really out of a motivation of that she cared for this kid, or was it just because the village teacher told her that she could not lose the student? And so your motivations are kind of interesting there. So I don't know how to play that, and that was kind of one of the things that kind of
Yeah.
threw me
I
off a
can.
little bit on the film. Like, I don't
Uh-huh.
really know like how much of it was motivated by actual care of like
Right.
the child, because this child is actually one of the troublemakers in the school and causes her the biggest headaches when she's trying to teach the school. And then one of the things I really did like, though, and I like the second half of the movie more than the first half of the movie.
Hmm. Hmm.
The first half of the movie kind of just sets the stakes, and not a lot happens. And in fact, because they use actors who are non-professional, and because I don't think that I think a lot of the dialogue was improvised. There's a lot of repetitive lines that go back and forth between the characters, where they say, "Oh, you should do this," and then the other character says, "No, I don't want to do that," and the other character says,
Right.
"You should do
Right.
this." "No, I don't want to do this." It's like almost like to the point of like, "Come on, get to
Right.
the point."
Right. Right. Right.
Um, well, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but
No, no, yeah,
I was going to say, what?
the first half
Yeah,
is a little bit repetitive and
yeah,
deliberate, and the second half is where it really picks up and kicks into gear.
yeah. But the boy uh, leaves the town, and she's trying to find ways to get to the city. This is where I think is, to me, was the best part of the film, was she becomes a real teacher in that moment,
Correct. Yes.
because she's trying to figure out ways to pay for the bus fare to get there. And so
Right.
she involves the kids in trying to figure out, oh, how much is it going to cost? And, if we do this amount of work, can we earn
Right.
enough money? And so the kids start learning math through
Yes.
really
Uh-huh.
her own, not motivation to teach them math, but she becomes a natural teacher in that spot.
Right. Right.
And that's kind of really cool to me, to see these kids latch on to this, and like, because they now, and it shows the power of being a teacher, and how if you make things relevant to kids, they'll be more eager to learn, because these kids want to see their teacher succeed, and they want this kid to come back to their classroom. So that was really cool.
Right.
um,
Right.
and then when she's in the big city, to see her trying to adapt to a world that she is totally unfamiliar with was inspirational. But like I said, it's kind of tempered a little bit by the fact that I don't really know what her true motivation is, because she is told by the teacher that he will pay her extra money if
Right.
she does not lose one student.
Right.
So is it motivation purely, out of the child's
Right.
benefit, or for her benefit? So that's
Right.
where
I
I
think
kind of lost a little, like, kind of like, I don't know how much I should be impressed by what she's doing.
Well, I think that's part of what I think that's part of the charm of this, and I take it in a different direction. I think you're right. Her initial motivation is not one less. The title speaks for itself. Not one
Mhm.
less. She's not allowed to get one less because if she comes back with all the children intact after the month, she's going to get a bonus on top of what she's owed. From the mayor, right?
Mhm.
So her original motivation is selfish. Keep all the students. Keep all the students. That's it. That's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. But I think when she hits the city and when she sees how much trouble she's having in the city and how much, like, not cruelty, but just sort of
Mhm.
the the oppression of city life on a young country girl, she starts to maybe imagine how oppressive this culture and this shock is to the young boy, right?
Yeah,
And I think she
that's true.
empathizes with him at that point. And that's part of her journey, is that it becomes a selfish motivation that turns into an altruistic motivation and a real concern for bringing that boy back and rescuing him back to his home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but see, this is where I think the fact that they're having non-professional actors playing these parts is to the detriment, because I think a professional actor could probably convey that transition a little bit better,
Hmm.
because you do see real emotion from her towards the end.
Right.
I don't want to give away, spoilers or anything like that, but there is true emotion in what she does,
Right.
and you see that. But the transition from I just need to get this guy home so I can get money to I am really concerned for his well being is not as played as well as it probably would have been if they had a professional actor in it. That's kind of what I was talking about with the cast. There was moments where they would put
Yes.
on some really good performances, and you really felt for them. And I really felt that between her and the young boy towards the end of the film. And
But you
so
didn't
there's
see it transform in the middle, is what you're saying, kind of.
exactly. So that's kind of where it loses me a little bit. But like I said, I did enjoy the second half of the film way more than the first half of the film. And so what I would say is that overall, I did enjoy the film, but it was a little bit of a slog to get through the first half of the film.
Right. Well, I just have to say, Mike, I appreciate your comments, but you're wrong. It won the Venice Film Festival's Golden Lion and several other awards. No, I'm just kidding. No, I can see totally. I respect that. I do agree that there is a little bit of an unevenness to the performances, uh, but the times where they draw you completely in are really worth it and really make it in overall sense for me. The gives it enough punch, to sort of make up for the iffy moments, if you will. And I agree with you.
Yeah,
It certainly does pick up in the latter half of the film. So I totally agree with you. But I do think that the charm of the first half is to show how out of her depth she is, on the whole, to prepare you for the shock of the big city.
I will say that her character is so frustrating at times,
Yes,
and
totally.
and it's not that because of the performances or anything like that, or it's not that it's a bad character. It's just she's a 13-year-old girl and she does not know how to communicate very effectively, and a lot of
Right.
times, and you're just like sometimes you're just like there was a point where I was like yelling at the screen like, "Come on, just say something, say
Yes.
something, please
Yes.
say something."
Yes.
So I mean, in that way, it's very effective. It's also frustrating. So it's like both. So I see the appeal of what he was going for, what the director Zhang Yimou was going for.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you because like there's films that I have that same reaction to, where I get frustrated with films, but I think most of that is also intentional by those directors. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's a different kind
yeah,
of tension. Like this one, you're right. There's a lot of like tension about like, aren't you going to say something? You know what I mean?
yeah.
And but I think it's intentional in the sense that the audience feels it at the same time of sort of internalizing what she has felt, on this journey too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I
Somewhat.
totally agree with that, and that's why I always get annoyed by people who watch TV shows and they're like, "Oh, I hate this character because blah blah blah." And I'm just like, "It's the character; he's supposed to be that way." You know what I mean? Like,
Right, right,
there's reasons for the way they design, and the fact that you hate that character makes it good storytelling, right?
right. No, exactly,
So, not
exactly.
that I hate this character, but I'm saying, you get the same emotion sometimes, from people, and then just like, and they also relate the character to the actor playing them, and you're just like, no, this is intentional
Right.
by the actor and the director, and so yeah, so no, I do appreciate it. Like I said, while some of it was frustrating, that case was the good frustration where it just like because then when things happen, it becomes much more earned.
Yes. No, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. It wasn't easy. It didn't come easy. The sort of what you're talking about, that happens. Didn't come easy, and so I think that's we appreciate it a lot more, by the fact that it didn't come easy.
And then one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about was basically the movie wraps up talking with a title card that basically talks about Chinese the educational gap between you know uh, and how a lot of kids were dropping out of school and how they changed to I think it was a mandatory 9-year
Yeah.
education
Hmm.
system that showed success, but there was I kind of had to look it up online afterwards to kind of see what that all meant, and there was a lot of people that were on the fence of like, is this a pro Chinese government film because it was funded by the government, or was it critical of the Chinese government? Um, and I kind of saw it as a little bit more critical of the Chinese government than a. Some people were calling it like a propaganda film, which I don't agree with. Um,
No, yeah, yeah.
uh,
I
I found it
think you're
more
right.
critical because it really does show the difference between not just the education gap, but the economic gap, and all that stuff.
No, no, I think you're right. And what I think is, this was funded by the government, and Zhang Yimou is, has made films that are a little more sort of seemingly less governed by the kind of financing he's gotten. This is
Yeah,
obviously, like you mentioned, it is financed by the government, and of course, it wouldn't have been made. This is China, so it wouldn't have been
yeah,
made if it was too critical. But I
yeah,
do agree with
exactly.
you. I do agree with you that in a way, this is the genius of his movies, is that it sheds some harsh light where it needs to shed it. You know what I mean? Even under the constraints of being a government controlled film, he does show sort of the warts of this system and of this this culture and this population. I mean, it's clearly a class struggle between the people in those rural villages and the people in the cities. I mean, even a reflection of, like, when you mentioned she's trying to figure out, what's it going to cost. Nobody in the village has any idea of what things cost because
Yeah,
they are so removed from any semblance of wealth. That that
yeah.
they are really, one of the scenes I really like, and this is a spoiler. One of the scenes I really like, but is also like a heartbreaking scene, is that this whole class does some outdoor activities, we'll say, uh,
Hmm.
and they decide they want to get something to drink, and they happen to have a little bit of money on them. They think it's a good amount of money. They think it's actually enough at that point to
Yeah.
do something, and they have some to spare. So they decide to uh, drink a Coke, which none of them have done before, right? And so they go to a store and buy two. They have enough money to buy two Cokes, and
For
the
the whole
amount of
class,
money, yeah, for
for
the
30
whole
kids.
class, for 30 kids. And that is heartbreaking, but yet it's also a nice scene because they experience something for the first time, which is fun for the kids to experience something for the
Hmm.
first time.
Hmm.
But it's really sad when you think about it. Like, they use about 40% of their budget to get these two Cokes. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? And
yeah.
and so that's really telling about the two different societies. You know what I mean? The city society and the rural society. And so I think the fact that he's able to let show those distinctions and let these truths kind of come out is sort of his genius as an artist, even within that type of system.
I would totally agree with you, and I think that's the best thing I could say about this film is that, yeah, it does portray that in a very vivid way, and it is very eye opening, and he does a really good job with that. So while I might not have, um, think this movie's the best movie I've ever seen, I do think it's worth seeing, and I think it's very eye opening, and it's very interesting to see the whole the like I said, it's like a peek behind the curtain of what China at least was like in the 90s. So you know it's probably changed a lot in 20 years, but
Sure,
you
sure,
know
and I think it has, but yeah, I mean, I do agree that I think your take is valid. That it is critical in its own unique way, and again, I think that's part of his genius as an artist, is to be able to take a film that's sanctioned by this government and yet still show a critique of it.
yeah, I totally agree. Well, you got anything else to say about this film, or we
No,
gonna
I
wrap it up?
appreciate you watch. I appreciate you watching it. Again, it would have been a different film from Zhang Yimou, but this film to me is worthy, and I do think it's a good enough film for people to discover. But the larger point is really to say, hey, let's look at other films too, and I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to start doing it, and I have actually been doing it because I've had a couple trips recently, and the only films I've watched on the flights have been foreign films. So I'm making a conscious effort to get back to opening my film palette as much as possible.
I would say foreign films are probably the best, some of the best films to watch on a flight, because you can, because there's a lot of distractions on a flight when you're watching a film. But if you're reading the film, you can, take your headphones off if you need to, do something or whatever, and you can still follow along with the film. So
No,
I always put subtitles on when I watch a film on flights or trips.
Oh, well, I don't usually do the subtitles for the American movies, but I do find it, because of the fact that honestly, there's no other interest going on,
Yeah.
so I'm able to stay glued to it and pay close attention to it, and so it's very conducive to watching foreign films.
All right. Well, thank you for bringing this film to our attention, Martin. It was very interesting, and I do appreciate it. And I do agree with you. We should not limit ourselves to American films, and we should find out what else is out there. So very cool. So that about wraps it up for this week. Once again, I want to ask you to share and like and subscribe and do all those cool things that all the cool kids do when they enjoy a podcast. So,
Definitely.
Martin, do you have any final words of wisdom for us before we go?
Nope. Let's just keep it on going. Let's keep 2021 positive and keep your spirits up.
And once again, I want to thank Eureka Failure for providing the music as they do every week. We really appreciate them. And I guess we'll just see you next time. And remember, follow us on Instagram for stuff in between episodes.
Definitely.
Bye.